The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was filled with beings from 100 different worlds. Some had scales, some had feathers, and some were made of living crystal. They had gathered here for thousands of years to discuss matters of peace and war, but today was different. Today, a new species had come to speak. Ambassador Daniel Carter walked into the hall with his head held high. He was a tall man with gray hair and calm eyes that had seen many difficult negotiations. Beside him walked Commander Katie Morris, a woman with short brown hair and a face that rarely showed emotion. She had spent 20 years in the military and had learned to keep her feelings hidden. The council members watched them with curiosity. Humans were new to the galaxy. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 300 years ago. In the eyes of the older species, they were like children who had just learned to walk. Gen Vok, the delegate from the Velthari people, leaned forward in his seat. His body was made of blue crystal that caught the light and scattered it across the room. He had lived for over 2,000 years and had seen many young species come before the council. Most of them did not survive long. Ambassador Carter, Gen Vok said through his translator device, "We have called you here to give you a warning. The Nigma Empire has declared your species to be a target. They believe humans are weak and easy to conquer." Daniel did not flinch at these words. He had expected them. The Nigma Empire was the most feared power in the galaxy. They had conquered over 40 species in the last 1,000 years. Their method was simple and brutal. They would invade a world, kill anyone who resisted, and enslave the rest. No one had ever stopped them. "We are grateful for the warning," Daniel said in a steady voice. "But we have not come here only to listen. We have come to deliver a warning of our own." A sound of surprise went through the hall. The Rithani ambassador, a tall, insect-like creature with 4 arms, made a clicking noise with his mandibles. "You wish to warn the Nigma?" "Ambassador, you do not understand what you are saying. The Nigma have hundreds of thousands of warships. They have conquered species far more powerful than yours." Daniel nodded slowly. He had done his research. He knew exactly how dangerous the Nigma were, but he also knew something that the council did not. He knew what humans were capable of when their families were threatened. "Our warning is simple," Daniel said. "We ask the council to deliver this message to the Nigma Empire. Do not challenge humans. Survival is not guaranteed." For a moment, there was silence. Then laughter erupted from several parts of the hall. Many of the delegates found the idea of humans threatening the Nigma to be absurd. It was like a mouse threatening a lion. The loudest laughter came from the Nigma observer. Overlord Krathven was a massive reptilian creature who stood nearly 3 meters tall. His scales were dark green, and his eyes were yellow with slit pupils. He had personally overseen the conquest of 5 worlds, and had killed thousands with his own claws. "Little human," Krathven said, his voice a low hiss. "Your species is amusing. You have been in space for only 3 centuries. We have been conquering for thousands of years. Your warning is noted, and it is dismissed." Katie Morris stepped forward. Her hand moved slightly toward the weapon at her side, a habit she had developed over years of service. She looked at Krathven without fear. "Then note this as well," she said. "When your worlds burn and your fleets are scattered across the void, remember this moment. Remember that you were warned. Remember that you chose this path. God be us." The laughter in the hall died away. Something in her voice made even the oldest delegates pause. It was not anger or boasting. It was something colder. It was certainty. Krathven bared his teeth in what might have been a smile. "I will enjoy conquering your species, human. Your worlds will burn, and your people will serve us as slaves." "You can try," Katie replied. Gen Vok watched this exchange with growing concern. He had seen many species face the Nigma. Most of them had begged for mercy or tried to negotiate. He had never seen anyone respond with such calm confidence. Either the humans were fools, or they knew something that the rest of the galaxy did not. After the session ended, Gen Vok approached Daniel and Katie in the corridor outside the hall. His crystal body hummed softly as he moved. "Ambassador Carter," he said quietly, "I must ask you something. The Nigma are not to be taken lightly. They have destroyed civilizations far older than yours. What makes you believe you can stand against them? Daniel looked at the ancient being for a long moment. Then he smiled. But it was not a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who had made peace with a difficult truth. Counselor Genvok, do you know the history of my species? I know some of it. Your kind evolved on a harsh world. You fought many wars among yourselves before uniting. That is true, Daniel said. But there is something else you should know. Throughout our history, we have faced threats that should have destroyed us, predators that were faster and stronger than us, diseases that killed millions, natural disasters that wiped out entire populations, and we survived every single one. He paused and looked back at the council chamber. We survived because we learned something important. When our backs are against the wall, when our families are threatened, we do not surrender. We do not run. We fight with everything we have, and we do not stop until the threat is gone. Katie added, the Nigma think this will be easy. They think humans will break like the other species they have conquered. They are wrong. They have never faced anything like us. Zenvok was silent for a moment. In his 2,000 years of life, he had heard many species boast about their strength. Most of them had been wrong. But there was something different about these humans. They did not speak with pride or arrogance. They spoke with the quiet confidence of people who had already accepted what was coming and had decided to face it head-on. I hope you are right, Genvok said finally. For your sake and for the sake of the galaxy. The Nigma have caused enough suffering. Daniel shook his hand, a human gesture of respect. When this is over, Counselor, I hope we can call each other friends. As the two humans walked away, Genvok watched them go. He had a strange feeling that he could not explain. It was almost like hope. For the first time in centuries, he wondered if the Nigma Empire might finally meet its match. 3 months later, the invasion began. The colony world of New Boston was a peaceful place. 4 million humans lived there, building homes, raising families, and dreaming of the future. The planet had green forests, blue oceans, and cities that sparkled under twin suns. Children played in parks, while their parents worked in factories and farms. No one expected war to come to their doorstep. Admiral Chris Howard received the news aboard the carrier Defiance. He was a man in his early 50s with a shaved head and eyes that had seen too many battles. When the alert came through, he was drinking coffee in his ready room. He set down the cup and walked to the bridge with steady steps. Report, he said as he entered. Lieutenant Amy Sullivan turned from her console. She was young, barely 30. But she had proven herself in training exercises many times. Her face was pale as she delivered the news. Sir, long-range sensors have detected a Nigma fleet exiting hyperspace near New Boston. Initial count shows approximately 2,000 warships. Chris felt his jaw tighten, but he did not let his expression change. 2,000 ships. The entire human defense fleet in this sector numbered only 274 vessels. The math was not good. How long until they reach the colony? He asked. At their current speed, approximately 6 hours. And evacuation? Amy shook her head. Impossible, sir. We do not have enough transport ships to move 4 million people in time. Chris stood in silence for a moment. He thought about those 4 million people down on the surface. Families, children, people who had come to New Boston hoping for a better life. The Nigma would show them no mercy. Their standard practice was to execute 10% of any population as a demonstration of power, then enslave the rest. Open a channel to the Nigma flagship, Chris ordered. The main screen flickered, and the face of Fleet Commander Vethrix appeared. He was a typical Nigma, with dark green scales, sharp teeth, and eyes that held nothing but contempt. Behind him, Chris could see the bridge of a massive warship. Human Admiral, Vethrix said. You face the might of the Nigma Empire. Surrender your colony immediately, and we will show mercy to some of your people. Chris leaned back in his chair. Fleet Commander, I am required by human military law to offer you one chance to withdraw from this system. I suggest you take it. Vethrix stared at him for a moment, then burst into harsh laughter. You threaten us? We have 2,000 ships. Our sensors show you have fewer than 300. You cannot win this battle. 274, Chris confirmed. You have 1 hour to leave this system. After that, I cannot guarantee your safety. The laughter stopped. Vethrix leaned forward, his yellow eyes burning with anger. You are either very brave or very stupid, human. Either way, you will die today. The screen went dark. Amy Sullivan looked at her admiral with wide eyes. Sir, what do we do? Chris pressed the button for ship-wide communications. All hands. This is Admiral Howard. In 1 hour, we will engage a Nigma fleet that outnumbers us nearly 8 to 1. They have come to enslave our people and destroy our homes. They believe this will be easy. They are wrong. He paused, letting his words sink in. Humans have faced impossible odds before. We have fought against enemies who were stronger, faster, and more numerous. And we have won, not because we are the biggest or the toughest, but because we never give up. Because when our families are threatened, we become something that no enemy wants to face. He took a deep breath. Today we show the galaxy what happens when you threaten humanity. Battle stations. The human fleet did not form traditional battle lines. Instead, they scattered across the system, using asteroids, moons, and debris fields for cover. Chris had studied every record of Nigma combat tactics. He knew they preferred direct confrontation, overwhelming their enemies with superior numbers. They were not prepared for a different kind of war. The Nigma fleet advanced in a massive wedge formation, confident in their victory. They expected the humans to meet them head-on and be crushed. Instead, human ships struck from the shadows. Missiles came from unexpected angles. Small destroyers darted in, fired their weapons, and vanished before the Nigma could respond. The first Nigma cruiser exploded in a ball of fire when 6 nuclear-tipped torpedoes struck it simultaneously. The blast was so bright that sensors on nearby ships were temporarily blinded. Vethrix watched in disbelief as his fleet began to take losses. How are they doing this? Find those ships and destroy them, but the humans were ghosts. They used electronic warfare to confuse Nigma sensors. They hid behind asteroids and attacked from blind spots. They fired weapons that the Nigma had never seen before. Kinetic rounds that traveled at incredible speeds and punched through armor like paper. Chris directed the battle from the Defiance, his voice calm even as chaos erupted around him. Alpha Squadron, concentrate fire on the flagship. Beta Squadron, cut off their retreat path. Gamma Squadron, protect the civilian transports. Yes, civilian transports. Even as the battle raged, every available ship was evacuating people from New Boston. Chris knew he might not win this fight, but he would save as many lives as possible. The battle lasted for 7 hours. When it was over, the space around New Boston was filled with wreckage. Over 1,200 Nigma ships had been destroyed. Another 300 were so badly damaged they could not fight. The surviving vessels fled into hyperspace, their formation broken, their confidence shattered. The human fleet had lost 87 ships. Thousands of sailors had given their lives. But New Boston was saved. 3 million people had been evacuated before the Nigma could reach them. On the bridge of the Defiance, Amy Sullivan reported the final numbers. Sir, enemy fleet has retreated. We have confirmed kills on over 1,200 vessels. The colony is secure, Chris nodded slowly. He felt tired in a way that went beyond physical exhaustion. Good people had died today, but they had died protecting their own, and they had won. Send a message to the Galactic Council, he ordered. Tell them that first contact with the Nigma Empire has concluded. Human casualties were significant but acceptable. Enemy fleet status is severely diminished. Our warning stands. Across the galaxy, species that had lived in fear of the Nigma for centuries received the news with shock. A young species, barely out of their home system, had defeated the most powerful military force in known space. It seemed impossible, and yet it had happened. On Krath Prime, the Nigma homeworld, Supreme Overlord Methvan received the report in his throne room. For the first time in his long life, he felt something he did not recognize. It took him a moment to understand what it was. It was fear. The news of the Battle of New Boston spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Every species, every world, every being with access to communications heard about what had happened. A young species called humans had defeated the Nigma Empire in open combat. They had been outnumbered 8-1, and they had won. On worlds that had been conquered by the Nigma, slaves whispered to each other in the darkness. For the first time in generations, they dared to hope. On worlds that feared invasion, leaders gathered to discuss this strange new power. And on the Nigma homeworld of Krath Prime, there was chaos. Supreme Overlord Methvan sat on his throne, which was made from the bones of conquered species. He was the largest and most powerful of all the Nigma, with scales as black as space and claws that could tear through metal. He had ruled for 300 years and had never known defeat. Until now. "Explain this to me," he growled at his advisors. "How did this happen? The humans were supposed to be weak. Our intelligence said they were easy prey." Strategic Advisor Selkoth stepped forward. She was smaller than most Nigma, but her mind was sharp. She had studied warfare for her entire life, and she was perhaps the only one in the room brave enough to speak the truth. "Supreme Overlord," she said carefully, "our intelligence was incomplete. We assessed humans based on their physical characteristics. They are small. They have no natural weapons. Their bodies are fragile compared to ours. We assumed this meant they would be easy to defeat. And we were wrong," Methvan said. "Yes, we failed to account for their psychology, their history." Selkoth activated a holographic display that showed images from human past. There were ancient battles with primitive weapons. There were wars fought with machines that could level cities. There were explosions bright enough to turn night into day. Humans evolved on a planet that was trying to kill them, Selkoth explained. Their world is covered with predators, diseases, and natural disasters. Most of their surface is water that they cannot breathe. Their own sun bombards them with harmful radiation. By all logic, they should have gone extinct long ago. But they did not. They survived. They adapted. They conquered their own world before reaching for the stars. Methvan leaned forward. Many species have difficult homeworlds. That alone does not explain their victory. No, Selkoth agreed. But there is something else. Something unique to humans. She changed the display to show a human soldier carrying a wounded comrade through a battlefield. They have a concept that translates roughly as spite. When threatened, humans do not simply fight to survive. They fight to make sure the threat can never harm anyone again. They will sacrifice themselves without hesitation if it means protecting their people. "That is foolish," one of the other advisors said. "War is about survival. Throwing away your life serves no purpose." Selkoth shook her head. "You do not understand. To humans, protecting their families is more important than their own survival. This makes them unpredictable and extremely dangerous. They will not surrender. They will not break. They will keep fighting until they win, or until every last one of them is dead." Methvan was silent for a long moment. He had conquered dozens of species in his lifetime. All of them had eventually submitted when faced with overwhelming force. The idea of an enemy that would never submit was disturbing. "What do you recommend?" he asked finally. Selkoth hesitated. What she was about to say could cost her life. "Supreme Overlord, I recommend we consider negotiating a peace." The chamber erupted in angry shouts. Nigma did not negotiate. Nigma conquered. To suggest otherwise was almost treason. Methvan raised his hand, and the room fell silent. "We will not negotiate," he said. "We will not show weakness. Instead, we will gather every ship in our empire and crush the humans completely. Call back all fleets from the border worlds. We will assemble a force so large that no amount of human trickery can defeat it." Selkoth bowed her head. She had tried. Now all she could do was watch as her empire marched toward what she feared would be its doom. Meanwhile, on the human command station Sentinel, General Laura Collins was preparing for the next phase of the war. She was a woman in her 60s, with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. She had been a soldier for 40 years and had risen through the ranks through skill and determination. Her aide, Captain Ben Taylor, entered her office with a tablet full of reports. He was young and eager, one of the best officers she had ever trained. "General, our intelligence indicates the Nigma are calling in all their forces. They are planning a second invasion with at least 10,000 ships." Laura took the tablet and studied the data. "Good. Let them come," Ben hesitated. "General, even with our technological advantages, those numbers are concerning. We cannot match them ship for ship." Laura set down the tablet and looked at her young officer. "Ben, do you know how humans won the wars of our history? We rarely had the advantage of numbers or resources, but we won because we adapted faster than our enemies. We invented new weapons, new tactics, new strategies. We found ways to turn our weaknesses into strengths." She walked to the window that looked out at the stars. "The Nigma think this is a war of ships and soldiers. They are wrong. This is a war of minds, and the human mind is the most dangerous weapon in the galaxy." "What are your orders, General?" Laura turned back to face him. "We go on the offensive. I want every shipyard working at full capacity. I want our scientists developing new weapons. I want our soldiers training for combat scenarios that no enemy has ever seen. And I want intelligence on every Nigma world, every fleet position, every weakness." "You intend to attack them?" "I intend to end them," Laura said. "Not through genocide, through total defeat. When this war is over, the Nigma Empire will no longer exist as a threat to anyone. Their slaves will be free, their conquered worlds will be liberated, and the galaxy will know that humanity does not just defend itself. Humanity protects the innocent." Ben felt a chill run down his spine. Not from fear, but from something else. It was pride. Pride in his species. Pride in what they were about to do. "I will see it done, General." As he left, Laura looked back at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Nigma were gathering their forces, preparing for what they thought would be their greatest victory. They had no idea what was coming for them. Humans had tried to warn them. They had chosen not to listen. Now they would learn why that was a mistake. 6 months had passed since the Battle of New Boston. In that time, humanity had not been idle. Every factory on every human world had shifted to war production. Shipyards that once built cargo vessels now built warships. Scientists who once studied distant stars now designed weapons. And soldiers trained day and night for the battle that everyone knew was coming. The Nigma Empire had gathered its forces as promised, 12,000 warships, the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. They came from every corner of their territory, leaving conquered worlds with minimal defenses. Supreme Overlord Methvan was confident. No species had ever faced such overwhelming force and survived. Admiral Sam Ellis watched the enemy fleet emerge from hyperspace near the colony world of Haven's Gate. He stood on the bridge of the battleship Resolute, surrounded by officers who trusted him with their lives. He was a calm man with steady hands and a mind that could calculate 1,000 variables in seconds. "Enemy count?" he asked. Tactical Officer Megan Price checked her console. 12,300 vessels confirmed. "Sir? That is the entire Nigma military," Sam nodded. This was exactly what they had planned for. The humans had only 800 ships at Haven's Gate, but they had something more valuable than numbers. They had preparation. "Activate the network," Sam ordered. Throughout the system, hidden devices came to life. They had been placed over the past months by stealth ships, hidden in asteroid fields and debris clouds. They were jammers, designed to disrupt Nigma sensors and communications. On the Nigma flagship, Fleet Admiral Korthvan watched his displays flicker and die. What is happening? Why are our systems failing? His officers scrambled to find answers, but there were none. The humans had spent 6 months studying Nigma technology, finding weaknesses, and exploiting them. The mighty Nigma fleet was suddenly blind and deaf. Then the missiles came. They emerged from the darkness in waves. Not conventional explosives, but something new. Electromagnetic pulse warheads that overloaded shields. Kinetic rounds that shattered armor. Guided torpedoes that sought out engine cores. The humans had learned from New Boston and had built weapons specifically designed to destroy Nigma ships. Within the first hour, 4,000 Nigma vessels were disabled or destroyed. They drifted in space, their crews helpless, their weapons silent. "Press the attack," Sam ordered. "All squadrons, engage." The human fleet moved like a single organism. They had trained for this exact scenario. Each captain knew their role. Each crew knew their purpose. And leading the charge were the Phantom Squadron, stealth destroyers that had been built in secret. They were invisible to any sensor the Nigma possessed. Korthvan watched in horror as his fleet was torn apart. Ships exploded around him in cascades of fire. His officers screamed reports of destruction from every sector. This was not a battle. It was a massacre. "Order a retreat," he shouted. "All ships fall back to hyperspace." But the humans had planned for that too. Interdictor vessels had positioned themselves at key points, generating gravity fields that prevented hyperspace jumps. The Nigma fleet was trapped. The battle lasted for 9 hours. When it was over, the Nigma had lost over 10,000 ships. The survivors, fewer than 2,000 vessels, finally managed to escape when human forces allowed them to flee. It was a deliberate choice. Sam wanted survivors. He wanted them to carry the news back to Krath Prime. Megan Price reported the final count. "Admiral, enemy fleet has been neutralized. We have captured over 4,000 vessels with crews intact. Our losses were 112 ships." Sam closed his eyes for a moment. 112 ships. Thousands of human lives. They had won a great victory. But the cost was real. He would remember every name on the casualty list for the rest of his life. "Calculate a course for Krath Prime," he ordered. Megan looked up sharply. "Sir? The Nigma homeworld? They started this war. We are going to finish it." 3 weeks later, the human fleet arrived at Krath Prime. The Nigma homeworld hung in space like a dark jewel, its surface covered with cities built over thousands of years. Once, it had been the heart of an empire that ruled through fear. Now, fewer than 2,000 ships stood between it and the human fleet. Sam opened a channel to the planet. "Supreme Overlord Methvan. This is Admiral Sam Ellis of the United Earth Fleet. Your military has been destroyed. Your territory is under our control. I am giving you an opportunity that you never gave your victims. Surrender." The face of Methvan appeared on the screen. He looked older than before. His scales dull. His eyes hollow. The arrogance was gone. In its place was something that looked like desperation. "What do you want, human? Have you come to destroy us as we would have destroyed you?" Sam shook his head. "We are not like you. We do not enslave. We do not exterminate. We are offering you a choice. Surrender unconditionally. Release every species you have enslaved. Allow your leaders to face justice for their crimes. If you do this, your people will live. Your world will survive. And if we refuse," Sam's voice hardened, "then I will turn your planet to glass. Every city, every monument, every trace of your civilization. The Nigma will become a warning to the galaxy about what happens when you threaten humanity." There was silence on the channel. Methvan looked at the human admiral, and for the first time, he truly understood what they were facing. Humans were not like other species. They did not bluff. They did not make empty threats. If Sam Ellis said he would destroy Krath Prime, he meant it. But there was something else in the human's eyes. It was not hatred or cruelty. It was restraint. The humans had the power to commit genocide, and they were choosing not to. They were offering mercy to an enemy that had shown none. Selkoth, standing behind her supreme overlord, spoke quietly. "Accept, my lord. We have lost. But if we accept their terms, we survive. Our people survive. Perhaps in time, we can rebuild. Perhaps we can become something better than we were." Methvan was silent for a long moment. Then, Slowly, he bowed his head. We surrender. Across the galaxy, species that had been enslaved for generations received the news. The Nigma Empire had fallen. They were free. On 100 worlds, beings who had known nothing but chains looked up at the sky and wept with joy. And at the center of it all stood humanity. A young species that had been dismissed as weak and insignificant. They had proven to the galaxy that they were neither. They had warned the Nigma Empire. The Nigma had not listened. Now the galaxy would remember. Part 5. The New Galactic Order. The fall of the Nigma Empire changed everything. For thousands of years, the galaxy had lived under the shadow of Nigma conquest. Species had hidden in fear, hoping they would not be the next target. Worlds had surrendered without fighting because they believed resistance was useless. Now that shadow was gone, and light was spreading across the stars. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session in the Great Hall. Every delegate was present. Some had traveled for weeks to be there. They came to witness something that had not happened in centuries. They came to see the rise of a new power. Ambassador Daniel Carter walked into the hall with Admiral Katie Morris at his side. She had been promoted after her service in the war, commanding ships that had helped liberate worlds from Nigma control. They both looked tired but proud. They had earned their place here. Genvok, the Velthari delegate, rose from his seat. His crystal body glowed brighter than Daniel had ever seen before. When he spoke, his voice carried through the hall. Ambassador Carter, the galaxy owes humanity a debt that can never be repaid. You have done what none of us believed possible. You have ended the Nigma threat. 40 species that were enslaved are now free because of your actions. Dozens of worlds that lived in fear can now look to the future with hope. Daniel inclined his head in acknowledgement. We did only what was necessary to protect our people, and once we saw what the Nigma had done to others, we knew we could not stop until all their victims were free. The Rithani ambassador clicked his mandibles nervously. He was one of those who had laughed at humanity's warning all those months ago. Now he looked at Daniel with something between respect and fear. Ambassador, we must discuss certain concerns. Humanity has demonstrated capabilities far beyond what any of us expected. You defeated the largest military force in known space. You conquered an empire. Some in this council worry that humans may become the next great threat. A murmur of agreement passed through the hall. Even gratitude could not entirely overcome fear. These species had lived under tyranny for so long that they could not imagine power without corruption. Daniel opened his mouth to respond, but Katie stepped forward first. She had faced doubt and fear before. She knew how to handle it. You fear us, she said simply. That is understandable. You have seen what we can do when threatened. But let me tell you what you did not see. She activated a holographic display that showed images from the aftermath of the war. Human medical ships orbiting Nigma worlds, treating wounded soldiers who had tried to kill them days before. Human engineers on liberated planets, helping rebuild infrastructure that the Empire had let crumble. Human diplomats working with freed species to establish their own governments. After the Battle of New Boston, we treated over 10,000 Nigma prisoners with dignity and medical care. They were our enemies, but they were also living beings, and we would not let them suffer. When we liberated the slave worlds, we did not claim them for ourselves. We helped them rebuild their own societies. On Krath Prime, we had the power to destroy everything. We chose justice instead. She turned to face the full assembly. Humanity does not seek conquest. We do not want an empire. We have seen what empires do to the galaxy, and we want no part of it. But we will defend ourselves, and we will defend those who cannot defend themselves. If that makes us frightening, then let us be feared for the right reasons. The Velthari delegate stepped forward. I have watched many species rise and fall over my long life. Most of those who gained power used it for their own benefit. But humanity is different. You had every reason to be cruel. The Nigma would have enslaved your children and burned your worlds. Yet you showed mercy. You chose to heal instead of harm. He turned to address the council. I propose that humanity be offered full membership in the Galactic Alliance. Not as a junior partner, but as an equal. Let them help us build a better galaxy. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Some delegates supported the proposal immediately. Others raised concerns and asked questions. But in the end, the vote was unanimous. Humanity was welcomed into the alliance. After the session, Daniel and Katie walked through the corridors of the council station. Through the windows, they could see ships from a dozen different species passing by. Some of them flew closer to the human vessels, curious to see these newcomers who had changed everything. "Do you think they really trust us?" Katie asked. Daniel considered the question. "Not entirely. Not yet. Trust takes time. But we have earned their respect, and that is a start." They stopped at a window that looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, human ships were patrolling trade routes, protecting cargo vessels from pirates. Human doctors were treating diseases on worlds that had never seen modern medicine. Human teachers were helping species that had been slaves for generations learn to read and write. "We came to the stars hoping to find friends," Daniel said quietly. "We found enemies instead. But maybe now, after everything, we can finally find what we were looking for." 1 year later, a memorial was built on New Boston. It stood in a park near the center of the main city. A simple structure of white stone that caught the light of the twin suns. On its walls were carved the names of everyone who had died in the war, human and alien alike. Admiral Sam Ellis, now retired, attended the dedication ceremony. General Laura Collins stood beside him. They watched as families placed flowers at the base of the memorial. Among them were people from a dozen different species, all united in remembering those who had given everything. A young girl ran past them, laughing as she chased a butterfly. She was from one of the liberated worlds, adopted by a human family after the war. Her people had been slaves for 300 years. Now she was free to run and play and dream of the future. Laura smiled as she watched the child. "That right there, that is why we fought." Sam nodded. "That is why we will always fight. Not for conquest, not for glory. For them. For the children. For everyone who deserves a chance to live without fear." Above them, human ships moved through the sky. Guardians of a peace that had been earned through sacrifice and blood. They were part of a network that now spanned the galaxy, working with allied species to ensure that no empire of cruelty would ever rise again. And across the stars, species who had once trembled before the Nigma now looked up with hope. Because humanity stood with them. Because humans had proven that courage and compassion could change everything. They had warned the Nigma Empire, "Do not challenge humans. Survival is not guaranteed." The Nigma had not listened, but the galaxy had learned, and it would never forget.